Ever been to a wedding where everyone's whispering the same question? Is she marrying him for his money? Today's gossip calls it gold digging, but here's the thing. Women making strategic romantic decisions for economic survival and advancement? That's not a modern invention. That's literally all of human history. So before we clutch our pearls about who's marrying whom for what, let's take a delicious bite out of history. Welcome to Rome 40 BCE. That woman over there? That's Fulvia, history's first documented power wife. By the time she married Mark Antony, her third politically connected husband, she'd already amassed influence that would make a modern CEO jealous. Roman nobility didn't just marry, they merged, like corporate acquisitions with better food and worse plumbing. Imagine the negotiation. Fulvia bringing her family wealth that reached into 3 provinces, plus the experience of having already buried 2 politically useful husbands. And Mark Antony offering military connections and rising political power. Less a romance, more a merger of 2 power players who recognized each other's strategic value. Their marriage wasn't just a union. It was an alliance that would influence Roman politics for years. Fulvia even commanded troops and minted her own coins. Not exactly the move of someone who was just in it for the money. She was in it for the power. The money was just a bonus. For thousands of years, women had limited paths to economic security and social power. Marriage wasn't just their best option. Often it was their only option. Which brings us to perhaps history's greatest marriage strategist, Eleanor of Aquitaine. At age 15, she inherited an area of France larger than the French king's own lands. Talk about bringing assets to the relationship. Picture young Eleanor, just 15 years old, suddenly inheriting an area of France larger than the French king's own lands. Land rich but army poor, she needed to diversify through strategic marriage. Her options? The French king, a not much personality but solid defensive capabilities, and, oh yes, a crown. Eleanor, practical even then, essentially swiped right on her medieval dating app. Eleanor first married King Louis VII of France. When that marriage no longer served her interests, she engineered an annulment and, just 8 weeks later, married Henry, soon to be King of England. She didn't just marry money, she was the money. Eleanor brought the equivalent of billions in today's wealth to both marriages. She was the ultimate catch, and she knew it. The Middle Ages, when the drinks were terrible but the marriage contracts were airtight. The marriage marketplace formalizes. A formal gathering with aristocrats and gentry. Young women in beautiful gowns sit primly while mothers hover nearby, eyeing eligible bachelors. 19th century England, when marriage market wasn't just a metaphor. It was literally an economic institution. Jane Austen wasn't writing romance novels. She was documenting an economic system. Remember that famous opening line from Pride and Prejudice? It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. That wasn't romantic, that was financial reporting. The cold calculation was breathtaking by modern standards. Mr. Darcy, 10,000 a year. Pemberley Estate. No sisters to compete for inheritance. A daughter might ask if he was handsome, but mothers knew the truth. At 10,000 a year, he could have 3 heads and still be considered quite the catch. Let's be real, this wasn't gold digging. This was survival. Women in this era couldn't inherit property if male heirs existed, couldn't vote, couldn't attend university, and had almost no professional options. For women like Jane Austen, remaining single meant a life of genteel poverty and dependence on the charity of male relatives. Marriage was their economic plan, their retirement fund, and their health insurance all rolled into one. One dance with economic security, two dances with social status, and if there's time, maybe a quick step with actual affection. But what happened to women who didn't make a good match? Or any match at all? Factory work at starvation wages. Domestic service with no job security. Prostitution. Teaching the spoiled children of the wealthy for room and board. So when modern people call historical women gold diggers for making practical marriages, this was the alternative. Do you still think women are dumb? New World, similar rules. Late 19th century America. When new money industrialists needed something old European aristocrats had, social legitimacy. Between 1870 and 1914, more than 200 American heiresses married into the British aristocracy alone, bringing today's equivalent of $1 billion across the Atlantic. Imagine the scene. His lordship boasting about his family's estate standing for 8 centuries, the north wing dating back to William the Conqueror. Meanwhile, our American heiress mentally calculates how many railroad profits it would take to fix that leaking roof he quaintly calls historical character. She's thinking wet. He's thinking wedding. Perfect business arrangement. These weren't gold diggers. These were trade agreements. European nobility got cash. American families got titles and social connections. The original corporate merger. Take Consuelo Vanderbilt, forced by her socially ambitious mother to marry the Duke of Marlborough. She brought $2.5 million in railroad money. That's about $80 million today, to save his crumbling estate. The morning of her wedding, Consuelo Vanderbilt sobbed inconsolably. Her mother, exasperated, reminded her that tears wouldn't change a thing. She was going to be a duchess. Love was irrelevant. This was business. In her autobiography, Consuelo later wrote she spent her entire wedding day crying. The price of a title? Only her happiness and about $80 million in today's money. So romantic. In her autobiography, Consuelo later wrote she spent her wedding day in tears. The good news? Their palatial home, Blenheim Palace, got indoor plumbing out of the deal. Isn't that a good deal for a bathroom renovation? It only cost her happiness and $80 million. Bargain. The modern era, new freedoms, persistent patterns. The 20th century changed everything. Women gained the right to vote, access to education, and unprecedented economic opportunities. For the first time in history, a woman could support herself without marriage. And yet somehow, society still pushed the idea that a woman's ultimate success was marrying well. Funny how that works. The 1950s educational films, essentially instructional guides on how to catch a husband. The message was clear. Men don't like women who are too intelligent. Hide those college degrees and career ambitions behind a perfect pot roast. Be pretty but not too ambitious. Smart but not smarter than him. Capable but always in need of his help. The contradictions would be comical if they hadn't shaped generations of relationships. The 20th century gave women new options but kept many of the old expectations. Women could now work and be judged for who they married. And nowhere was this contradiction more visible than in Hollywood, where the gold digger stereotype got its modern form. Films like Gold Diggers of 1933 played the concept for laughs, but they reinforced a message. Women who pursued wealthy men were scheming and untrustworthy. How true is that? Notice how these films rarely mentioned the limited options women had, or how men controlled most of the wealth and power, or how society valued women primarily for youth and beauty rather than intelligence or capability. Convenient oversight, don't you think? The 20th century loved nothing more than a scandalous marriage with an age and wealth gap. When 26-year-old Anna Nicole Smith married 89-year-old billionaire J. Howard Marshall in 1994, the media had a field day. Gold digger was the kindest label she received. Funny how when King Henry II married Eleanor of Aquitaine despite their 11-year age gap and her fortune, it was historic. When Anna Nicole did basically the same thing, it was trashy. Today's dating landscape would be unrecognizable to our ancestors. Women can pursue education, careers, and financial independence. They can choose partners for love alone if they want. And yet, studies show women still prefer partners with good financial prospects, and men still prefer younger partners. Are we really so different from our ancestors? So after this whirlwind tour through the economics of love, what have we learned? That women throughout history have made strategic choices with the options available to them. That powerful women have used marriage as effectively as any business merger? Or perhaps that we're still grappling with the same questions our ancestors faced, just in new packaging. Here's what I think. The gold digger label isn't just simplistic. It's a way of shaming women for operating strategically in systems designed by men. When men make calculated decisions for financial gain, we call them strategic. When women do the same in relationships, we call them gold diggers. The truth is, relationships have always been economic as well as emotional. For most of history, they were primarily economic. So the next time you hear whispers about who's marrying whom for what reason, maybe ask yourself, in her position, throughout history, what would have been her alternatives? What systems shaped her choices? And why are we so quick to judge women for navigating a world they didn't create? Here's to all the so-called gold diggers throughout history, the women who looked at their limited options and chose survival, security, and sometimes even power. They weren't victims or villains. They were strategists, and honestly, they'd probably find our modern dating complaints absolutely adorable. Join us next time, like and subscribe,